Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the economy and investing. At the beginning of September, I noted that 55% of the time the S&P 500 loses ground in September, and history held true this year. September this year was the worst month of the year for the S&P 500, which lost about 5% of its value, which, by the way, is about close to average of what it does lose on when it's a losing September. On the flip side of this, 70% of the time, the S&P 500 increases in value by 7% in the last 3 months of the year. So, Michael, when I asked you this question about a month ago, you said you expected a choppy month. What about the rest of the year? Do you think we might see that 7% gain in the last quarter of the year?
Well, Stacy, you predicted the markets would sell off in September, so I think you would probably be better to answer that question on what's going to happen the rest of the year. I think, I 100% think there's going to be a bit more volatility into the end of the year. We have stuff happening in Congress, and again, that doesn't impact markets over the long haul. But a bunch of investors they get nervous when a government shutdown is on the horizon or the debt ceiling is going to be broached, and I think we'll have those will be resolved before anything major happens. In that regard, we still have an inflationary problem. The Fed has raised rates. I mean, I'm a broken record when I talk about the Fed and how much they've raised rates over the past 18 months. And again, we're really starting to see the effects of that matriculate into the economy starting pretty much right now. The good news is inflation does seem to be surprising a little bit to the downside in many areas of the economy, which I think could give the market some reprieve to the upside as we head into the year end. The biggest thing that we're paying attention to from an economic standpoint, Stacy, is that unemployment number or the jobless claims. Those come out every Friday. And if you start to see jobless claims really tick up, that's when we would get a little bit more conservative and recognize that the economy is probably likely going to start stalling a bit as we progress forward. The unemployment rate is at a very, very healthy 3.8%. So I'm very hopeful that if we get an increase in jobless claims, even if the unemployment rate goes back to 5.5%, which would be a pretty big jump up in the unemployment rate over a short time frame, that's still arguably below average over the last 30 to 40 years or so. So I do think we're going to have a lot of volatility, mainly because, again, the Fed has raised rates. Cost of borrowing has become quite expensive. The mortgage market's over 8% right now, and you're hitting into a period where typically there's some seasonality in the markets, whether September's down, October's up, so you're going to see volatility there. But longer term, this is generally how an economic cycle works.
Frank or
so
Ken? Shana?
I'm gonna take the opposite of that. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of. I think it's going to be very volatile for all of the reasons that Michael laid out. No doubt, the Fed is still going to do what the Fed's going to do. And Congress, I don't care what party you're in, or especially if you're an independent and you don't belong to a party, we're all eye rolling over the antics of Congress. That is a thing every American can agree on. That being said, as I drove around this weekend and as I just live my life, I see so many help wanted signs, especially in entry-level jobs or jobs that can be learned quickly. And I think this is telling me that the strength of the consumer is still out there, that smaller companies and small business need to hire people to keep the business that they have going. Because I've seen a couple of places near me, food places are shutting down on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday because they don't have enough workers. They have demand for their product, but they can't give their product because they don't have workers. I think this is an interesting conundrum that we find ourselves in, but I think it's also saying that the fundamental economy is oddly strong and spending continues. We'll see if that occurs. This Friday is really big with the jobs number, but the strength is out there and it's mystifying to a lot of us.
One of the things that's happening on the employment side, especially in the low end, in the last year, we've had legal immigrants of 1 million people, which is the way it was 100 and some years ago when we were a small economy and growing. We are now in a small workforce that needs to grow, And these people will become employed as they get settled in wherever they're going to be, and that'll be at the low end. For instance, in the HOA where I am, the people they used to cut the grass every Wednesday. Now they're getting there about every 10 days because they don't have enough people to do the work. And these people work hard. I mean, they come in, they start when the law allows them to turn those mowers on, and they stop when it gets dark. They really work hard. There just aren't enough of them. And this immigration situation that has been allowed to happen is good for the economy. It's going to allow some people who are ready to move up into supervisory roles do so, because there's some backfill people available for that who don't necessarily bring a lot of skills, just a willingness to work. And so I'm excited long term. Short term, Stacy, the market will do what emotions drive it around to do. It has very little to do with facts. It has to do with emotion.
Okay, Shana, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just try to wrap this all up. And, there are certainly a lot of risks out there. And granted, there are some opportunities too. But where I want our viewers to stay focused is not on the short term of what happens day to day. Let's encourage them to look at a long-term lens, and tying it back to retirement. That's really what matters most. So regardless if we have the seasonal trend in the market, we had a down month in September, market goes up the next 3 months. So be it. But really, let's stay focused on the long-term lens of all of this. What does performance or volatility look like over 3, 5, 10-year periods? Because, we're all in it to at someday retire and enjoy the next phase of life.
All right. Well, that's great. The only problem with that, Shana, is that when I bring up these questions, I do it for fun. And, it's more difficult to talk about a 5-year plan than it is,
Wow.
the next 3 months. But
Well, it's more exciting. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
All right. Thanks. We'll have to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.